Well, speaking of people losing their jobs, Brian, and again, we are not taking pride in this or enjoyment, I should say, in someone being unemployed. We are not celebrating this event or trying to drum up any type of back patting for this happening. We are simply stating facts that didn't we just say in the open of the show 2 weeks ago that we knew who the next one was that was going to get fired? Matt Riddle? And wouldn't you know who won the pony, folks? Wouldn't you know who lost the race to the employment window? They fired Matt Riddle. And is this a surprise that we were talking based on the perception of him that probably existed in the office because of his outside the ring antics in the wrestling business, but you didn't even know, and I didn't follow him enough to even care, that his UFC career, Dana White thought he was pretty much a fucking moron as well, did he not? And said, I don't want this guy to work for me anymore. So the timing seems probably as bad as any wrestler has ever picked for him to make a public fucking stew and launch an investigation that gets national publicity right as the company that's already owned UFC is taking over the goddamn WWE. I mean, he's got great timing.
You're a publicly traded company. The last thing you want is some guy who keeps getting into trouble, keeps failing drug tests, leaves one porn star for another porn star, and then that porn star starts doing interviews about it. It's nonstop stuff. The JFK incident. I wasn't too aware of him.
No, and wait a minute now. For those of you who might not be completely up on Riddle's life, we're not talking about implicating him in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It was at JFK Airport that he announced that he had been sexually assaulted by, I guess, one of the...
Jack Ruby.
By Jack Ruby, one of the TSA employees that was patting him down and trying to plant that fucking rifle on him.
Well, apparently, and again, you and I were not very familiar with his MMA career. We knew people thought he had a good look, and then he went into wrestling, was working for, I think, Gabe Sapolsky with Evolve, and that led into NXT. But here's Dana White. This was tweeted out by Patrick the Heel on Twitter, or X, whatever it is now. Dana White talking to, I believe, your very good friend, Chael Sonnen. Let me go to this.
The guy fights on prelims. You know, does Matt Riddle sell any more tickets? Does he sell any more pay-per-views? The guy's fighting on the prelims, okay? He's fighting his way up to get the opportunity to possibly someday become a big star in the sport. Then he comes out and says, we treated him horrible. He was treated so horrible here. You were making $162,000 a year. He's making something like $52,000 or $54,000 a fight, and you fight 3 times a year. Unless you get injured or something like that happens. We have health insurance here, which has never been done in the history of the world with fight promoters, okay? Now, the reason he's not in the UFC anymore is because he could not pass a drug test. The guy couldn't pass a drug test, okay? So he couldn't, and think about this. You have to go to work 3 times a year, and you couldn't pass a drug test? You're so weak-minded and so addicted to marijuana that you couldn't stay off it enough to pass a drug test 3 times a year. Well, guess what, dummy? They drug test in the real world, too. You think you're going to go to work 325 days a year and not get drug tested? Right? He couldn't pass a drug test 3 times a year, but he's going to pass it in the real world. Right? And I want to know where this rocket scientist is going to go and make $100,000 a year. Right? And also, this is the guy, Matt Riddle, who did an interview and said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and children.
Oh, my.
What?
Oh, my.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I want to point out, MMA Junkie, the people that did this story took one side of the story, and they're writing this big story about a guy who said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and kids, and only got his side of the story. Real journalism. Real journalism.
Yeah, not surprised by that. That's one thing that we don't see down here at
All right, well, let's stop it there. You heard Chael Sonnen, but wow.
By the way, and I'm going to vouch for Chael there. It's not his fault that Dana White was speaking from inside an oil drum. But God, that sounds like one of those and sign this paper saying you will never try to work for me again type of speeches. Apparently, Mr. Riddle's gimmick that we have said looks too much like real to be a gimmick is real. He's a complete fucking moron, and everything he does is goddamn ill thought out and potentially poorly executed.
Yeah, there are people who, no matter what, make bad decisions throughout their life, and there's not much that people can do to stop them from themselves.
Well, in this case, that Drew McIntyre won't have to put up with it. Remember, they were doing the odd, reluctant tag team of Matt Riddle and Drew McIntyre. Everybody he's done that with looks like it's so easy to be annoyed by him.
Randy Orton.
Remember Owens and well, Zayn doesn't get annoyed at anything. He's a pacifist.
He's the annoying one. No, Zayn is the annoying one, so he can't outweigh the annoyance of someone else.
Well, but when Riddle out-annoyed him, Zayn became kind of the sane one in the middle there. It was, can't we all just get along? The Rodney King of the piece. But nevertheless, they had to be doing that, the writers, the creative brain trust, because they're always ribbing people about real life shit. They must have been ribbing this guy that everybody thinks you're fucking annoying. And you do stupid things and they don't want to fucking hear all this shit anymore. So he had no support from the UFC world for his MMA background. And he's just made news for a ridiculous reason, which came down to him being drunk and disorderly, which that's what not me. If anybody wants to sue anybody, I refer you to what the official statement from the police department at the fucking JFK airport. We responded to a drunk, disorderly passenger, and the new TKO brain trust decided we don't need this dipshit doing shit like this when we're at over $100 a share. And meanwhile, our only domestic competition of any size whatsoever is firing them or hospitalizing them faster than he can keep them. So we don't need this dipshit, getting us bad publicity, and we're going to be smooth sailing to con the Marks and the Rubes out of a fucking fortune. And they're on a roll there doing it.
WWE, for good or for bad, they look at everyone as a chance to market someone for a long period of time, make money off their image and their likeness and their IP for a very long time. They can't invest in someone who constantly has problems like this. There's a reason why some of the really talented people in the last 25 years never got to WWE. It's because they're looking for people they can invest in. They may make mistakes, and they often do with the booking and various other things. But if you're WWE, if you're TKO, if you're Endeavor, how could you justify investing any more money in Matt Riddle? You have to believe, just based on track record, there's going to be another embarrassing incident soon.
Well, and the WWE can make all the mistakes they want. And then if they realize they made a mistake, they can try to fix it. Or if not, they can move on to the next thing. But you as an individual talent can't make too many mistakes because they don't need that. They can make them. Who's gonna fire the fucking people running the company for making a mistake about talent or booking or whatever? Nobody. But you can't make a bunch of mistakes and get a bunch of fucking negative attention, because then they don't need that. But that's, again, that's the fucking issue now. And that's been the issue. And that's why AEW was formed, is you better toe the line because there's no place else to go but down. Well, you better toe the line in the WWE because there's still no place else to go but down.